The new Snow White trailer dropped yesterday, and it's just too wonderful. This is already and is going to continue to be the most magical movie ever made in terms of doing absolutely everything wrong. Pissing everybody off in all the wrong ways. Making everybody laugh their heads off for all the wrong reasons. Ruining a great many careers for all the wrong reasons. And losing hundreds of millions of dollars for all the wrong reasons. You might counter with, well, what's a good reason to be losing hundreds of millions of dollars? What's a good reason to ruin your career? What's a good reason to piss everybody off? Well, if you're doing an art project like Megalopolis, something you believe in and love, or if you're trying to provoke people for change or something like that. So I'm going to start with the title, then I'm going to talk about the dwarves, then I'm going to talk about the actors, and then I'm going to link it to Batman. The title. I always say judge a book by its cover. The title should be a synopsis of the synopsis. The worst title a movie can have is somebody's name. Like The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Like, who cares what their name is, especially, or unless it has something to do with the story. In the case of Snow White, it does have something to do with the story. Or it did have something to do with the story until they screwed around. Now, since Disney has been hyping this movie as the first remake of the first Disney princess, because of that, it is especially important to retain the original title, Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. It's forgivable that they shortened it to Snow White. The original Grimm story was called simply Snow White. But the enormous problem is that the words Snow White are not just a name, but a description of a girl whose skin is as white as snow. So when you replace it with a brown girl, it defeats the whole story. Her white skin is an analogy for her purity. Not racial purity, purity of heart. And if you don't like that, then don't make the movie. Should you change the title to Sand Brown because her skin is as brown as sand? No, that would be considered istophobe, or whatever is polite way of describing it. But in the Brothers Grimm tale, I'm 99% sure that it begins with, her skin was as white as snow. So you can't screw with that without taking everything out of it. I mean, I guess the best you could do is have her around a lot of snow. She was born in the snow. But then you're changing the story once again, so what's the point? Dwarves. What is so wrong with dwarves? Not only in the original movie, but also in the original Grimm story, there were 7 dwarves who worked as miners and lived in a cottage. They were dwarves. Now this is a you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't thing. If you include dwarves, you're damned. If you don't have dwarves, well then what's the problem with dwarves? What do you have against dwarves? If the word dwarf is offensive, then should you call it Snow White and the Seven Little People? But even then, if you're depicting them as living in a cottage altogether, that might be offensive. When they made the Lord of the Rings movies, and they decided not to use little people as hobbits and dwarves, the little people acting community was outraged and just distraught. They thought this would be their great opportunity to get acting work. So you're damned if you don't include little people as the dwarves. But understandably, you're damned if you do have little people as dwarves, because you're caricaturizing little people as magical, or silly. It's kind of understandable. I mean, it would be like every black person in every movie always being a basketball player. But worse, because basketball players aren't fictional characters. So Peter Dinklage, who's the most successful little person acting right now, or ever probably, he complained about the title, and they originally were going to cast little people as the dwarves, but because of Peter Dinklage, they changed it. So there's 7 little people out there who missed out on the role of a lifetime. It would have changed their lives, gave them a career, And I guess it set a precedent for now no movie can have a little person as an actor. I recently watched the Wicked movie, and I was noting how the Munchkins, instead of being little people, had been replaced by gingers. Because I guess it's okay to make gingers magical, mystical characters. So what Peter Dinklage did was what I have heard referred to as he pulled the ladder up behind him. Meaning his little person status is what got him to the career point that he's at. And now he's preventing any other little person from making it to his heights. No pun intended. Oh, and looking into his career, it turns out, in 2008, guess what? Peter Dinklage was in the movie The Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian. And guess who he played? He played Trumpkin the dwarf. Mr. Integrity didn't mind playing a mystical dwarf. But now it's not okay for anybody to do that. If he had such standards, he would have refused the role of Trumpkin the dwarf in Chronicles of Narnia. So now, not only are little people not being cast as the dwarves, I don't think the 7 characters are even called dwarves. But the problem with having words like dwarf be politically incorrect is that whatever word you replace it with, that will be politically incorrect in 10 years. So now the 7 little people are these really weird looking CGI, freaky looking things. So it would still piss me off if I was a little person to see me be represented by a freaky looking CGI character. And it also defeats the point of having a live action Snow White if you've got CGI characters accompanying the real life characters. So not only has Disney pissed off the entire little people acting community and prevented them from wanting to ever see this movie, they've probably also pissed off all little people everywhere, and will make them not want to see this movie. Not just that though, they've probably prevented all little people from ever wanting to see a Disney movie or deal with Disney. The actors, the main actors, or more particularly the lead actor, Rachel Zegler. Disney cast Israeli actress Gal Gadot as the Wicked Queen, and then they cast Rachel Zegler as Snow White, and Rachel Zegler is pro-Palestine, anti-Israeli, and so the two of them have been going at it on Twitter, which just generates all this bad blood, behind the scenes drama that leaks online and everybody knows about it, distracting from the movie, distracting from the hype that Disney's trying to build for the movie, also probably pissing off Palestinians and Israelis. So now not only are little people not going to go see Snow White, neither are Israelis or Palestinians. And not just them, but also people who don't want to hear about politics. They're not going to want to see this movie. You're going to be watching these actors interact, and you're going to be thinking, I wonder how much they hate each other while they're doing this scene. Also, Rachel Zegler, and more importantly, Rachel Zegler has used this opportunity to star as Snow White. She's used it as a pulpit, as a megaphone for her to broadcast all of her views, whether they be political or whether they be gender related. She's just voicing all of her opinions, and many of them are offensive to others. And so now those people are not going to come and see the movie. And even if you do agree with her views, you're still going to find her to be extremely annoying, to be going off and popping off like a know-it-all. Nobody wants to hear an actor talking about their views on things. And not just any actor, but an actor who's very young and inexperienced and really doesn't have a lot of wisdom or life experience. See, Gal Gadot did not achieve fame until I think her 40s or something, right? And so she had to struggle. She was even going to quit acting because it was so hard. So she behaves herself. She doesn't have an ego that's out of control. Rachel Ziegler, I think she just danced her way since being a toddler into fame. She never, I'm not going to say she didn't work, but she didn't struggle the way most actors do. Young actors, just like young rock stars, are usually, their egos are just out of control, and they're just really messed up by getting that much fame that early. So I don't have a list of all the obscene, annoying, immature, naive, arrogant things that Rachel Ziegler has said publicly to turn everybody off of her as a person and as an actress and as Snow White. But I did notice that in one interview she referred to Snow White as our movie. And I found that really snotty. Because this kind of movie is not your movie. This is Disney's movie. They've orchestrated it. They've done everything. You did nothing. All you did was act. Like Ryan Reynolds can he can refer to Deadpool and Wolverine as our movie because he actually helped write it and finance it. But Rachel, you're just a cog in the machine. Anybody could have been cast as Snow White, and it would have chugged along just as easily and just as smoothly, or more smoothly. And you know what, honey? Your movie might recast you for all we know. That's how bad you've been. Your movie might not be yours for long. That's like a McDonald's employee referring to McDonald's as our restaurant chain. Wait, it's not like that. It is that. Because, Rachel, you are a McDonald's employee. You're a Disney employee. You're nothing. You're on the lowest level. You know how much Rachel Ziegler was paid to play Snow White? I'll tell you how much. A pittance. She's not exactly a big name. She's not Robert Downey Jr. She doesn't get to call any shots on the movie. She doesn't get to say, I don't like that line, I'm going to do this line instead. And I'm not sure if it was her that referred to the toxic fans. It might have been. But many actors in the Star Wars and the Marvel and the general Disney movies in those areas have referred to their fans as toxic when they don't like their crappy shows and movies. And it occurs to me, you know what? You're the one that's toxic, not your fans. You're toxic. In fact, I just looked up the definition of toxic. Poisonous, or very harmful or unpleasant in a pervasive or insidious way. And I guess from Rachel, good old Ziegler's perspective, the fan base would be described as toxic since they're laughing and mocking her nonstop. But she's playing her role. She's playing her toxic role, that's for damn sure. She's not only toxic to her fans, she's toxic to her co-workers. I don't know that anybody's going to want to work with her after this. Batman. Now, what would Batman possibly have to do with this? I'm glad I asked. A few years ago, a friend of mine who's something of a social scientist remarked to me that Batman is terrible as a character. He explained that the idea of a billionaire being the hero and the idea of the poor people being the criminals or the villains simply doesn't work. That it's a bad message inherently, and there's really no way to make it work. And I love Batman more than most people, but I see what he's saying, and I think that the world has come to a point where maybe Batman is no longer as good of a character as he was maybe in the 60s when there were less billionaires. Possibly the idea of Batman is outdated. You know, back in the 60s, people still believed that, you know, being a billionaire meant that you worked really hard and you got it the right way, and we believed in meritocracy. You get what you deserve, and it's only the lazy people that are poor. But today, that's no longer the case. Whereas, like, Lex Luthor works as an evil billionaire. that still works today. Robin Hood would work today because, you know, he's poor and he's helping poor people by ripping off billionaires. And in fact, the new Batman movie kind of addressed that, the fact that his father may have been corrupt. And in the same way, I'm saying Snow White was a good movie for its time, but it might not be the kind of movie that works today. Refer back to everything I said about dwarves and being white, her skin as white as snow. Does that work today when 90% of the population is not white? Examples of how outdated this story is abound just from the trailer. I wonder how long until a woman dancing becomes politically incorrect. Or a woman singing. There's a scene in one of the trailers where she's singing the Whistle While You Work song, right? And in the original version, I think, she goes, and I can use the broom. Because she's helping them, she's cleaning their house because they're dwarves. And they're letting her live there. So she's helping to clean the house. But in this version, she hands the dwarf the broom and goes, and you can use the broom. I think that's what happened. And the problem with that is like tenfold. First, you're saying that women shouldn't work, but yet you want women to work because they should be in the workplace? Are you, or second, are you saying women are too good to do the dirty work of like sweeping? They should just automatically star in Disney movies? Third, does Snow White expect the snow dwarfs to be her slaves because she's a woman? Is she saying they should whistle while they work, while she sits there? You do know that most people have the sort of jobs where they have to sweep. I've worked some jobs where I've had to do terrible things, you know, mopping, cleaning up toilets at a nightclub. It wasn't very, working isn't as glamorous as, I mean, I did whistle while I worked, but does this Snow White think that female empowerment means only doing the jobs that are easy? Not the sweeping? She wants them to work in a mine. They're working in a mine all day, and then they come home to her, and then they're going to clean up the house for her? Any self-respecting little person, or whatever, this magical creature, would kick her out on her ass if she did that. If I had a girlfriend, I would dump her if she did that, or I would be whipped. Again, in this turbulent, I'm not sure this movie works for this day and age, because you can't have a woman sweeping. And they're trying to rewrite history where who is the fairest one of all means, like, who's the most just, who's the most virtuous. And I'm sorry, that was not what it meant, and it doesn't make any sense. It really means who's the hottest chick. And that doesn't work in today's age. Currently, you can't be described as objectively beautiful, right? A woman could be 8 feet tall and morbidly obese, and she has every right to say she's as beautiful as everybody else. And she is as beautiful as everybody else because it's subjective. And the whole thing collapses. The whole movie collapses if we're saying who's the fairest one of all means has the most integrity, because the queen clearly has none. She's the evil queen. She doesn't work as an evil queen if she's fair. If I made the movie, I would be like, who's the hottest bimbo of them all with the biggest boobs? And then Ziegler, the great publicist Ziegler, said something like, oh no, this Snow White doesn't need a prince to rescue her. And in a way she's right. Today, you can't have a prince rescue you. So that entire plot point doesn't work today. There's almost nothing about this movie that works today. Almost everything about this story is politically incorrect today. No, I'm not sure whether they marketed this as a timeless story, but it's the exact opposite of a timeless story. So if you're going to do a remake of a movie that is intrinsically and explicitly out of date, your only choice is to do a shot-by-shot remake and just have it and just say, look, we're just doing a remake. We know it's out of date. We know there's things that they don't conform to today's standards, but we're just doing a remake, okay? You know, we're not trying to promote the idea that that little people are dwarves and they live in cottages together. One YouTuber commented that at the end of the movie, the prince should say, I can't kiss her to get her out of her coma because that would be, that would be assault. So she just stays in the coma forever. So Disney's in a lot of trouble with all their movies because pretty soon you're not going to be allowed to have a Disney princess. Disney has to try to please everybody, and they're pleasing nobody. What's worse, they're pissing everybody off. If you support gays, click like. If you respect blacks, comment. If you think women are people too, click the notification bell. And if you care about sick children, subscribe.